Hello everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen, and in this video I'm going to be recommending books based on books that I don't like very much. So the idea here is that I have a list of books that are not my favorites, don't like them very much, but that I've read similar books that I do like a whole lot more. This was a little bit a hard one to come up with, but hopefully I've compiled a decent list. So the first book that I have that I did not like very much was The Whole Thing Together by Anne Brashares. I love The Sister to the Traveling Pants by this author, so I was pretty excited for this book. It's like a beachy romance, which always sounds fun, although I know myself not to be an actual huge romance fan, but I love The Sister to the Traveling Pants, so I had high hopes anyways. And yeah, this one was just quite boring. I didn't really like the relationships. I think there was a lot of sibling relationships going on that I didn't really like. Not romantic sibling relationships to my memory, but still, just was not interested. So instead, I would recommend Words in Deep Blue by Cath Crowley. This is also a beachy romance, but throw in some more books, which is always nice. This one did take a while to grow on me. I liked it better on the second read. But yeah, I just liked the relationships in this one better. It wasn't as boring. I really enjoyed the bookish elements, and it was nice to read after the disappointment of The Whole Thing Together. So even if you're a big Sister to the Traveling Pants fan, I would recommend this over Anne Brashares' The Whole Thing Together. Next, I have Mosquito Land by David Arnold. And instead of Mosquito Land, I would recommend Kids of Appetite by David Arnold. Now, these books aren't necessarily super similar to each other, but David Arnold doesn't have a whole lot of books out yet. He's still a fairly new author. He only has 5 books, and Mosquito Land was his first debut book, and Kids of Appetite was his second book ever. And I read this one first and went back to Mosquito Land because at the time those were the only 2 he had out. So I went back to Mosquito Land expecting great things like this book, one of my favorite books of all time, and it was a huge disappointment. It was a very strange book. I did not enjoy the plot, and I actually haven't read any other David Arnold since. So what I'm really recommending here is if you're gonna like read all of David Arnold's books for whatever reason, skip his debut and go straight to Kids of Appetite. Next I have This Is Where It Ends, and this is a book about a school shooting told from multiple perspectives, and there was just nothing to it. It was like a big nothing burger for me. It wasn't interesting, none of the characters felt very fleshed out. I was not concerned about any of the characters, which in this kind of a high stakes situation, you really should be concerned for your characters, and I just wasn't. This one was a real miss for me, and I don't think it did a good job of delving into the topic that it was about at all. So instead of This Is Where It Ends, I would recommend Violent Ends, which is also about a school shooting told from multiple perspectives, and each perspective is written by a different author. These are all the authors on the back here. And even though this wasn't like a 5-star or anything by any means, I do think it was a lot more well done than This Is Where It Ends, but I think This Is Where It Ends is the more well-known book between the 2. So I would recommend skipping that one and reading this one instead if you are wanting to read a fictional book on this topic. Although I have not read like a ton of fictional books exploring this topic, so there might even be better options than this out there. Next, I have 10 Things I Can See From Here, and also Finding Audrey. I have read a handful of books that are kind of really about anxious and introverted characters, and these 2 for me were both misses. Although I had high expectations for them because I am usually interested in books with main characters who are introverted or anxious or whatever. So instead of these 2, I would recommend Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell or Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. And I don't know if the difference here is that both of these characters are quite creative and into like art and reading and stuff, whereas the main characters of 10 Things I Can See From Here and Finding Audrey were not so much. So maybe that's where the disconnect is happening. But yeah, those first two I just really expected to connect to the character and enjoy the stories. And they were both, again, just kind of nothing burgers for me. Whereas these two I love, super enjoyable. The characters are not only relatable, but also the stories are interesting. Next, I have Genuine Fraud, which is a book that I won, and it was a thriller, which I'm not always into thrillers, but the cover was just very cool, and it just seemed like it was gonna be such a cool book. And then I was just very confused by it. It wasn't as action-packed as I thought it would be. The cool vibes were not there the way that I thought they would be based on the cover and the synopsis. And I just did not enjoy this one at all. So if you're looking for those somewhat thrillery, kind of bad girl, cool girl vibes, I would recommend Good Behavior by Blake Crouch. And more so, honestly, I would recommend the TV show. But these three novellas are also good. And I think they captured the vibe that Genuine Fraud was trying to achieve, but did not. And it's a lot easier to follow. Next, I have A Prom to Remember. Again, I got this as sort of a prize package thing, along with Genuine Fraud, and the other book that I'm recommending instead of A Prom to Remember, which is The Fashion Committee. Because I read these two from the same, like, prize package, and they were both, like, very high school-y, YA, fluffy sorts of books, I just kind of associate them in my mind, and for me this one was the way better one. Next, I have a pretty controversial one, I think, but I have The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. This is a beloved book, but I just could not really get into the narrator's voice, and I preferred the movie. So if you've read Perks of Being a Wallflower and you don't understand the hype, like me, but you want to try something that has a similar vibe, I would recommend The Spectacular Now by Tim Tharp, which also has its own movie adaptation, also fairly popular, but not as much as Perks. But I don't think it's as well loved, but I like it a lot better. So if you've read Perks and you don't get the hype, you might enjoy this one better. And then finally, a slightly less controversial one, I have Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. And I would say if you're going to read a sick kids YA romance, The Fault in Our Stars by John Green is the way to go. In this case, the more popular one is the better one. So I'm here to confirm the hype this time. I would say don't waste your time on Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. Just do The Fault in Our Stars. So that was it for my recommendations based on books that I do not like so much. Let me know down below if you have any similar books where you like one way better than the other. I hope you enjoyed watching. Remember, words matter.